Have you ever wondered what separates a well-kept lawn from a wild garden overrun by weeds? It may seem like a simple distinction, but it's one that took centuries to make. And it all comes down to a single shift in perspective. Before the 14th century, European gardens were generally designed for function, not beauty. They were utilitarian spaces meant for growing food or displaying the wealth of a landowner who could afford to waste space on purely decorative plants. But then something remarkable happened. People began to see gardens not as mere necessities or symbols of wealth, but as works of art in their own right, meant to be appreciated for their beauty and used as a canvas for expressing intellectual ideas. And so an entirely new kind of garden was born. Welcome to this house today. I'm excited to share with you the story of an extraordinary Italian garden. Before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode. Chapter 1. Dawn of a New Garden. In the medieval period, European gardens were primarily enclosed spaces containing kitchen gardens, orchards, and sometimes small vineyards. These enclosed spaces provided food for families and a degree of privacy from neighbors. But they were typically little more than utilitarian plots. The primary purpose was to grow food and display the wealth of the landowner. In the late Middle Ages, wealthy landowners began experimenting with creating more ornamental gardens, often in conjunction with their homes. This practice was influenced by the Arab world, where geometric patterns, water features, and the use of plants for aesthetic purposes had been highly developed. However, these gardens were still largely seen as extensions of the household economy, primarily for the production of food and medicinal herbs. They weren't yet cultivated simply for the pleasure of the eye. But everything would soon change when a formerly utilitarian plot was given over to a work of pure aesthetics. In northern Italy in the early 15th century, a family commissioned the construction of a villa and its gardens in the countryside just outside of the city of Padua. Little is known about the original design, but excavations in the 20th century uncovered the remains of a large formal garden complete with hedges and paved walkways. In the early 1900s, the site was purchased by a wealthy industrialist who decided to completely reimagine the garden beds, planting rows upon rows of topiary, hedges and flower beds in geometric shapes. He also constructed a number of architectural elements such as obelisks and statues to be placed throughout the garden. His goal was to create a space that evoked the grandeur of the Italian High Renaissance, drawing inspiration from the villas of the Veneto and the gardens of the Medici family in Boboli. But his plans would be disrupted by the onset of World War II. The war caused him to abandon his project, leaving the garden in a state of disarray. It was at this point that the garden caught the attention of an American botanist named Carl Forster. Fascinated by the potential of the overgrown garden, Forster began to explore its design possibilities. As he surveyed the property, he noticed that the old brick pots and foundations from the previous garden were still visible beneath the tangled foliage. With a few friends, they set to work clearing away the vegetation, revealing the original layout. This discovery provided Forster with a unique opportunity to recreate a historical garden design while incorporating his own personal style. In 1952, Forster published a book called The Great Italian Gardens of the Renaissance, which outlined his vision for the garden. He proposed a series of distinct areas, each with its own unique character and purpose, all linked together by a network of paths and bridges. This included a central part of garden surrounded by hedges and flower beds, as well as more secluded areas for contemplation and reflection. The centerpiece of the garden was to be a series of 4 square parter beds, each divided into smaller sections with boxwood hedges. The design allowed for a variety of plants to be grown, including flowers, herbs, and even small trees, all in a highly structured and symmetrical layout. Each part of bed was separated by a gravel path, forming a cross-shaped pattern that led visitors towards the center of the garden. But what truly made this garden special was Forster's approach to plant selection. Instead of simply relying on traditional Italian plants such as citrus trees and flowering vines, he sought to introduce a wider range of species from around the world. He experimented with growing plants from Asia, Africa, and the Americas, introducing new colors, textures, and scents to the Italian garden. As he experimented with different plants and design techniques, Forster realized that he had created something entirely new, a garden that combined the best of both worlds, the highly structured formal of the Italian Renaissance with the exotic plants and informal charm of the English landscape. Style. By the mid-20th century, Forster's garden was complete, having taken 20 years to finish. He named the garden Adrotter in honor of his wife and opened it to the public so others could enjoy its beauty. Sadly, Forster passed away in 1970, but his legacy lives on through the garden he created. Today, visitors from around the world come to explore its winding paths and discover the hidden beauty of its exotic plants. In addition to the central part of garden, Forster also created a number of other areas of interest throughout the property. Near the entrance to the garden, he created a sunken garden surrounded by high walls, providing a sense of intimacy and seclusion. This area featured a variety of fragrant plants, including roses, lavender, and honeysuckle, making it a popular spot for visitors to relax and enjoy the scent. Further along the main path, visitors would encounter a small grotto adorned with statues and surrounded by a variety of climbing plants. The grotto provided a cool, shady retreat from the hot Italian sun and was a popular spot for photography. At the end of the main path, visitors would reach a small lake surrounded by a variety of trees and shrubs. The lake was stocked with fish and provided a picturesque backdrop for the garden. Visitors could walk around the lake on a series of bridges and boardwalks, taking in the tranquil surroundings. In addition to these larger areas, Forster also planted numerous smaller gardens throughout the property. One such garden was the rose garden, which featured a variety of old rose species planted in a circular pattern. Another was the herb garden, which contained a variety of medicinal and aromatic herbs. These smaller gardens provided visitors with a variety of experiences and allowed them to explore the beauty of the garden at their own pace. Forster's approach to garden design was highly influential and helped to popularize the Italian garden style in the United States and beyond. His plant selections were particularly noteworthy as he was one of the first gardeners to experiment with growing non-native plants in the Italian style. This helped to break away from the traditional notion that Italian gardens should only contain plants native to Italy and showed that it was possible to create an authentic Italian garden. Using plants from around the world, Forster's influence can still be seen today as many of the plants he introduced to the adoration garden have become staples of the Italian garden style. Chapter 2: A New Birth of Beauty. Forster's approach to gardening was deeply influenced by the philosophy of classicism, which emphasizes order, balance, and proportion. This is evident in the highly structured and symmetrical layout of the adoration garden, as well as in his choice of plants, which are carefully selected to complement each other and create a sense of harmony. He believed that gardening was not merely a practical activity, but a form of art that could express deep philosophical ideas. He saw the garden as a microcosm of the universe, with its own order and balance, and he sought to create a sense of wonder and contemplation in those who visited. The beauty of the garden lies not only in its visual appeal, but also in the way it makes one feel. The carefully manicured hedges, The symmetrical flower beds and the exotic plants from distant lands all work together to create a sense of order and tranquility. Visitors are encouraged to slow down, to take in the surroundings, and to appreciate the beauty of nature. The influence of classicism is also evident in the way Forster approached the history of gardens. He believed that the Italian Renaissance was the greatest period in gardening history, and that the gardens of the Medici family in Boboli were the epitome of this style. He sought to recreate the atmosphere of these gardens in his own design, using the same plants and design principles to evoke a sense of the past. However, Forster was not simply a traditionalist. He was also a pioneer who was willing to experiment with new ideas and push the boundaries of the Italian garden style. He introduced plants from around the world, including the Americas, Asia, and Africa, and he used them in a fresh and innovative way. This resulted in a garden that was both traditional and original, familiar and exotic, all at once. Looking at the Addison Garden today, it's hard to believe that just a few decades ago it was an overgrown and neglected space. Forster's vision was not only to create a beautiful garden, but to create a place that inspired wonder and contemplation. And he succeeded in doing so. As visitors wander through the winding paths and discover the hidden beauty of the exotic plants, they are transported to another time and place. The garden becomes a work of art in its own right, a testament to the power of human imagination and creativity. And so the legacy of Forster and the Adoration Garden continues to inspire gardeners and visitors alike, reminding us of the beauty and power of the natural world. Thank you all for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an exciting episode. A stroll through a Renaissance garden was not an innocent pleasure. Every curve and turn held a secret message designed to enlighten or entertain its audience. It was like reading a book, only this one was written in flowers, trees, and even the very paths you walked along. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this house. Today, we are exploring the secret language of Renaissance gardens. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode. In the last episode, we began to decode the language of Renaissance gardens by learning how plants were selected for their symbolic meaning. Now, we'll discover how carefully arranged plants and pathways formed the grammar of this secret language, creating coded messages meant to be read by those who knew the rules. And there were plenty of rules when it came to designing a Renaissance garden. First, consider this garden at Castello, Il Bonte, designed around 1530 by Italian architect Andrea Palladio for one of his wealthy patrons. At first glance, it appears to be a picture of idyllic nature, but closer inspection reveals an intricately designed composition. To better understand what we're looking at, let's begin with the basics of geometric design. A rectangle is the most basic shape in geometry, and therefore the building block for more complex shapes. In fact, the entire garden is built upon a rectangular grid. But notice how the designer uses a second rectangle placed diagonally over the first to create a strong visual accent across the garden. This diagonal line is a bit of garden grammar called an axis. An axis is the line formed between two focal points, like the diagonal path between these two fountains. Axes are an essential element of garden design because they provide structure and hierarchy to the overall composition. And just like the parts of speech in a sentence, different axes have different functions. Here in the La Bonte garden, this central diagonal axis acts like a subject complement, if you will, completing the thought of the garden as a whole. This technique of using diagonals to frame a garden is also seen in the Villa Lonti in Italy. where the main garden features a large rectangular pool placed diagonally across the composition. The pool becomes the subject complement, anchoring the design and bringing a sense of calm to the space. Other axes aren't always so obvious. Take this garden at Hengrave Hall in Suffolk, England. Designed in the 1620s by renowned landscape architect and gardener John Parkinson, the garden features several subtle axes which give structure to the composition. While there isn't a clear subject complement in this garden, there is still a clear hierarchy of elements. Notice how the central path draws our eye to the center of the garden, while other pots intersect this central axis at right angles. Even the flower beds follow this hierarchy, with the largest bed placed directly in front of the house, and the smallest beds placed perpendicular to the main path. In each of these examples, the use of axes creates a sense of order and hierarchy within the garden. Just as a writer uses punctuation to give emphasis and clarity to a sentence, the use of axes gives structure and meaning to the garden as a whole. But there are many other geometric grammatical devices used in Renaissance gardens. Next, let's look at how circles and squares function in garden design. Squares and rectangles are what we call regular polygons because all of their sides and angles are equal. Circles, however, are irregular polygons since no to radii are equal. Because of this irregularity, circles can bring a sense of freedom and naturalness to a design. Consider this circular garden in the Palace of Fontainebleau in France. Designed by André Lenotre in the mid-17th century, the garden features a series of concentric circles with a central fountain. Unlike the more structured elements of the design, the circular garden seems to flow and change constantly as the light and shadows move throughout the day. In fact, this garden was inspired by one of Lenotre's earlier designs for a French formal garden at the Château d'Yvergy. That garden famously featured a round pond in the center, which broke the strict rules of geometric design in favor of a more naturalistic look. This innovation made it one of the earliest examples of the English landscape garden in France. Circles could also be used to add variety to a predominantly geometric design. At the Castello, Il Palazzetto, an elaborate square parterre garden surrounds the central courtyard. Within each quadrant of the square is a circular bed filled with orange trees. These circular beds soften the harsh angles of the square, giving the overall design a sense of balance and harmony. On the other hand, squares are sometimes used to bring order to a more naturalistic setting. Consider the garden at Hatfield House in Hertfordshire, England. Designed in the early 19th century by Humphrey Repton, the garden features a large lake in the center surrounded by meandering ponds. Throughout the garden, Repton uses a series of square flower beds to bring order to the composition. These squares act like punctuation marks, giving emphasis to certain areas and creating a sense of rhythm throughout the garden. Squares are also used to give structure to the garden's architecture. At the Château de Chenonceau, the manicured gardens are famous for their exquisite symmetry. One of the most iconic views of the gardens is from the chateau itself, looking out over the perfectly symmetrical parterre garden set against the backdrop of the River Cher. The design is so balanced and harmonious that it appears almost artificial. And that's because it is. The entire design is based on a grid system of squares and rectangles. This grid provides the structure and hierarchy necessary to give the garden its clarity and precision. Some geometric shapes are a bit more complicated. Let us take a look at how circles and squares work together in this garden at Castello Sforzesco in Italy. This garden was designed in the early 15th century by master gardener Luca Camise for one of Milan's most powerful families, the Sforzeschi. Surrounding the central courtyard is a square parterre garden divided into 4 sections by intersecting paths. Each section features a circular bed with a shallow pool in the center. This design creates a playful dialogue between the regular and irregular shapes, resulting in a dynamic and engaging composition. But what about more complex shapes? How do these function in a garden setting? Enter the fascinating world of tessellations. A tessellation is a pattern of shapes that fit together perfectly without any gaps or overlaps. Of the many possible tessellations, perhaps the most well-known is the honeycomb, which is made up of hexagons. The hexagon is a highly efficient shape since it allows for the greatest amount of area to be enclosed with the least amount of material. Nature employs hexagons in a variety of forms, including the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. This is because the hexagon is the most efficient way to pack identical circles together. The popularity of tessellations in the Renaissance was due in part to the rediscovery of classical Roman mosaics. These ancient works of art feature intricate designs made up of small pieces of colored glass or stone. What's more, the development of perspective in painting allowed artists to create complex geometric patterns that appeared to recede into the distance. All of these factors combined to make tessellations a popular motif in Renaissance gardens. To see this, look no further than the Boboli garden behind the Pitti Palace in Florence. Designed in the late 16th century by garden architect and artist Bernardo Buontalenti, the garden is a masterpiece of Renaissance design. One of the most spectacular features of the garden is the intricate parter design made up of thousands of inlaid petals. This design, called a pavement, features a complex interweaving of geometric shapes, including triangles, squares, and hexagons. The result is a highly intricate and visually stunning design that showcases the mathematical precision of the Renaissance. As you can imagine, the creation of such a complex pavement required great skill and precision. The process began with the careful selection of materials. Small pebbles were chosen for their color and texture, and then they were carefully arranged in the desired pattern. This process was repeated until the entire pavement was complete. The end result was a highly intricate and visually stunning design that showcased the mathematical precision of the Renaissance. In addition to their aesthetic appeal, pavements also had a practical function. They helped to define the space and create a sense of order within the garden. By carefully arranging pebbles and other materials, gardeners were able to create pathways and borders that guided visitors through the garden. This not only helped to create a sense of order, but it also allowed for a greater variety of plants to be grown within the garden. By creating distinct areas for different types of plants, gardeners were able to maximize the use of space and create a more diverse and interesting garden for visitors to enjoy. By now, we've covered a lot of ground. So let's take a moment to review some of the key concepts we've learned. We've explored how circles and squares can be used to create balance and harmony in a garden composition. We've also learned how axes provide structure and hierarchy to a design, much like the parts of speech in a sentence. And finally, we've rediscovered the beauty and complexity of tessellations, and how they can be used to create intricate and visually stunning garden pavements. All of these elements come together in this garden at the Palace of Fontainebleau. Designed by André Lenotre in the mid-17th century, the garden features a series of concentric circles surrounding a central fountain. The design is then punctuated by the addition of squares, which help to create a sense of balance and harmony throughout the garden. Thanks for joining us this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode. Until next time, remember, a well-designed garden can be more than just a pretty place to relax. It can be a source of knowledge and inspiration to dwell. In the heart of Florence, the Boboli garden sprawls behind the Pitti Palace, an extravagant display of nature tamed by human design. Its meticulously ranged pots and perfectly placed statues create a sense of order amidst the blooming flowers and rustling trees. But there's more to the garden than meets the eye. Tucked away amidst the greenery, a secret message is written in stone and whispered by the wind through the leaves. A secret language that only those who knew its code could understand. Welcome to this channel, where history comes alive through stories of intrigue and adventure. Today, we're uncovering the hidden meanings behind the plants in Renaissance gardens, revealing the secret language they spoke. Chapter 3, Plants that Speak. As we stroll through the enchanting pots of the Boboli garden, every plant we encounter becomes a potential carrier of secret messages. The air is filled with the sweet fragrance of flowers and herbs, each with their own unique aroma and meaning. Let's take a closer look at some of these botanical ambassadors and decode their silent testimony. 3.1. Laurel. The unshakable beacon of glory. Our journey begins with the mighty laurel, a symbol of triumph and everlasting fame. This evergreen tree boasts leathery leaves that shimmer with a silvery sheen, forming a lush canopy that has inspired poets and emperors alike. The laurel's significance can be traced back to ancient Greece, where it was believed to be the sacred plant of Apollo, the god of music, arts, and prophecy. According to legend, when the Trojan hero Aeneas fled the destruction of Troy and arrived in Italy, he was guided to safety by a golden laurel branch. In gratitude, he made it a symbol of his adopted homeland, and the Romans followed suit, associating it with victory, honor, and peace. During the Roman Empire, generals returning from battle were often crowned with laurel wreaths to signify their triumphs, and emperors were adorned with laurel branches during their processions. As we admire the laurel's enduring presence in the garden, let us reflect on the power of symbols and the stories they carry across time. Just as the laurel symbolized victory for the Romans, it continues to stand tall as a beacon of achievement and recognition today. 3.2. Lavender, the soothing whisper of serenity. Now we turn our attention to a fragrant delight. The lavender, whose soothing scent fills the air and whispers tales of tranquility and peace. This aromatic herb, with its delicate purple blossoms, has captivated humans for centuries. Its name, derived from the Latin word lavare, meaning to wash, speaks to its historical use in bathing and cleaning rituals. In ancient Egypt, lavender was prized for its ability to purify the body and relax the mind. While in Greece, it was dedicated to the goddess Aphrodite, symbolizing love and beauty. During the Middle Ages, lavender played a significant role in medicine, with its antiseptic properties aiding in the treatment of wounds and infections. It was also believed to ward off evil spirits and bring good luck. As we inhale the calming fragrance of lavender, let us embrace the serenity it offers, allowing its soothing essence to wash over us like gentle waves on a peaceful shore. Just as lavender has brought comfort and healing throughout history, it continues to be a source of tranquility and solace in our lives today. 3.3. Myrtle. The alluring emblem of love and victory. Our botanical exploration leads us now to the enchanting myrtle, whose delicate white or yellow blossoms hold within them tales of love, victory, and immortality. This evergreen shrub, with its fragrant foliage, has captured the hearts and imaginations of cultures throughout time. In Roman mythology, the myrtle was said to have sprung from the blood of Adonis, the handsome young hunter who was loved by the goddess Aphrodite. As she mourned his untimely demise, her tears mingled with his blood, giving rise to the myrtle tree. As such, it became a symbol of love, beauty, and the fleeting nature of life. During the Renaissance, the myrtle's popularity soared, representing both earthly and heavenly love. It was commonly used in wedding ceremonies and as an emblem of the Virgin Mary. The inclusion of myrtle in gardens was a way to express one's devotion to a beloved or to pay homage to the divine. As we gaze upon the myrtle's graceful branches laden with fragrant blooms, let us appreciate its timeless allure and the stories of love and devotion it embodies. 3.4. Other plants with silent testimonies, while our focus today is on laurel, lavender, and myrtle. The garden's tapestry is woven with countless other plants, each contributing to the overall message of the landscape. Here are a few more. Rosemary. This aromatic herb, with its needle-like leaves, is dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Its strong, pungent odor symbolizes remembrance and loyalty. Rose, the quintessential symbol of love and beauty. The rose speaks volumes with its velvety petals and intoxicating fragrance. Different colors carry different meanings. For example, red roses express deep passion and desire, while white roses symbolize purity and innocence. Lily. Revered for its trumpet-shaped flowers, the lily signifies majesty, purity, and the resurrection of Christ. Its elegant form and intoxicating perfume make it a favorite among garden enthusiasts. Cypress. These tall, slender trees with their dark green foliage represent immortality and eternal life. They are mournful. Appearance has also made them a symbol of death and mourning in some cultures. Pine. The pine tree with its sturdy branches and green needles throughout the year stands for strength, longevity, and hope. Its cones are said to signify fertility and abundance. As we continue our exploration of the garden, let us take a moment to appreciate the subtle language whispered by these plants. Each leaf, flower, and fruit carries with it a silent testimony to the beliefs, values, and stories that have shaped our world. From the healing power of lavender to the enduring strength of the pine, these natural wonders speak to our deepest emotions and connections to the natural world. By understanding the secret language of plants, we unlock a deeper appreciation for the beauty and complexity of nature. So let us continue to explore, discover, and embrace the wisdom and wonder shared by these botanical ambassadors. Now, dear viewers, we invite you to join the conversation. What are your thoughts on the secret language of plants? Have you ever encountered a plant with a hidden meaning or a garden that conveyed a secret message? Share your experiences and insights in the comments section below. Your stories and perspectives enrich the tapestry of knowledge and help others discover the magic that lies in the silent testimony of plants. If you enjoyed this video and wish to embark on more historical adventures with us, don't forget to subscribe. Together, we can explore the fascinating stories that shape our world and uncover the secrets that lie within the pages of history. Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. Until next time, may your days be filled with wonder, discovery, and the enchanting beauty of the natural world. When you wander through a maze, there's an undeniable thrill at being lost, of not knowing which way to go or where you might end up. But when the maze is a garden, the enjoyment is heightened by the beauty surrounding you. If the design is clever, you may be unaware of the deeper meaning behind its layout. And if it's truly clever, the message is only revealed to those who have some knowledge of the language of gardens. I thought I was just going to teach you about the secret language of flowers in this series. But the more I read, the more I realized that there are layers upon layers of meaning, even in the smallest details. So I've decided to show you the secrets of the entire garden, not just the flowers. Today, we're going to see how the path you choose can reveal hidden meanings to those who know what to look for. This is the 4th episode in the secret language of Renaissance gardens. If you haven't already seen them, I highly recommend you check out episode 1, all about perspective, episode 2, a garden alphabet, and episode 3, flowery prose, before continuing here. Don't worry if you haven't seen them. This episode will make sense on its own. Just keep in mind that you'll get more of the references and the jokes if you do. In the last video, we talked about how the placement of certain plants could convey a message without the use of words. This was called flowery prose, and it could be done with the Bible as well, with trees taking the place of letters to spell out a word or a short phrase. This was common in the 16th century, and the most famous example is John Knox's Paradise, which spelled out God is good in large oak trees planted at Haddon Hall in England. But today, we're going to talk about another kind of prose, one that doesn't depend on the careful arrangement of plants, but rather the careful arrangement of pathways. And it's all based on one of my favorite garden features, the labyrinth. Now, mazes and labyrinths are often used interchangeably, and they are similar, but they aren't the same. A maze has multiple pods, and the whole point is to find the right one to reach your destination. A labyrinth has only one correct path, and the point isn't so much about reaching the destination, which is often just a statue or some other ornament, but rather about the journey itself. But the idea of walking along a single path to reach a destination is nothing new. Footpaths have been round since people stopped moving from place to place by crawling on hands and knees, and they've been carefully designed since the Romans were laying out their roads. As early as the Middle Ages, people had been making pilgrimages to holy sites, and these routes would often be marked by small chapels or shrines every few miles, giving travelers a chance to rest and pray on their way to the final destination. And while this sounds like a very solemn affair, these stations along the route often doubled as opportunities for trade and entertainment. By the time the High Middle Ages were in full swing, there were so many pilgrims on the road between towns that inns and hostels had sprung up along the way to cater to their needs, as well as places to buy food, drink, and even prostitutes. And of course, someone looking to ply his trade had to cater to the local customs. So along the way to Canterbury, you might find yourself passing the halfway house at the Mermaid Inn in New Romney, where a carving of a mermaid sits enthroned above the door. She holds a flagon in one hand and a fish in the other, and has to fish flanking her on the sides, all symbols of hospitality. And why not? If you didn't stop for a drink and maybe a tryst with a lady, you might find yourself thirsty and lonely in the middle of the night. It was in the late Middle Ages that people began to bring some order to the chaos of the pilgrimage routes. In 1399, a Benedictine monk named John Treviso wrote down directions to St. James of Compostela in Spain, which had become a popular destination. His directions for pilgrims is considered the first guidebook and provided practical information such as where to find lodging, as well as warning about dangers along the way. But it was in the 16th century that things got really interesting. The Italian architect Andrea Palladio included a description of an ideal route for a pilgrimage in his book, The Art of Engineering, published in 1570. He described the path as starting wide and narrowing until it reached a rectangle, then widening again as it approached the final destination. While he gave no indication that he was describing a labyrinth, this is exactly the shape a pilgrimage route would take to reach a church. It's clear that Palladio took inspiration from these existing routes, but he brought more order to them, turning them into something that could be found anywhere, anytime. He defined it by numbers rather than landmarks, and he turned the path itself into a teaching tool. Palladio believed that the path should be divided into 7 sections, each devoted to a different virtue. And these virtues were then repeated in the design of the church at the end of the pilgrimage. This type of garden, with its path laid out according to the 7 virtues and leading to a church, was called the Orchard of Virtue. And they were incredibly popular in the 16th century, with gardens being built all over Europe featuring this design. But if we go back to the beginning of the path, we can see that there's another layer to this design. The very first part of the walk begins with a double avenue, that is, two parallel paths running side by side. According to the language of gardens, parallel lines represented friendship. So the person designing this garden was making a statement right off the bat. This walk, which is meant to lead you toward virtue, is one that you won't have to take alone. As we move forward in time, we begin to see the influence of the Protestant Reformation on garden design. The emphasis on a direct connection with God led to a decline in pilgrimage destinations, and that, too, affected the popularity of the orchard of virtue. In England, during the Commonwealth, when Puritanism was all the rage, gardens were designed to reflect the simplicity and austerity of this new style of worship. The geometric patterns of Palladio were replaced by something simpler. Often a single path would wind its way through the garden, occasionally splitting and rejoining, forming something like the letter H or T, which stood for travail and travail. That is, the garden was a symbol of hard work and hardship, the same hardships that Christ had endured. But not everyone was a fan of this new style. In a letter to a friend, the English poet and gardener John Evelyn described the fashion as a sort of affectation in gardens to make crooked pots, irregular borders, and to suffer everything to grow wild and appear neglected. If the old French formal gardens pleased us with proportion, symmetry, and exact geometry, the new ones seduced us with irregularity, which is another word for dirt. Following the restoration of the monarchy, people began to return to the French style. But the pendulum swung back and forth throughout the 18th century as the debate between classicism and romanticism raged. This is reflected in the pots of gardens from this period, which often combine elements of both styles. A prime example is the garden at Stowe in England, which was begun in 1673 by the second Earl of Shelburne and continued by his son, the third Earl. The younger Templeman had strong feelings about the French formal style, calling it stiff and ill-contrived. But he also wasn't a fan of the new English landscape style championed by writers like William Kent. He called it confused and irregular. So he did what any reasonable person would do in such a quandary. He combined the two by creating something called the Bridge of Sighs, which ran the length of the garden. On one side was the French parterre with its geometric beds and statues, and on the other side was a more natural landscape. The bridge itself was lined with urns, and it was covered with a rustic wooden trellis on the upper level, hiding the true nature of this hybrid garden from casual observers. The path began as a straight line, representing reason and logic, but curved as it passed under the bridge, symbolizing the unpredictability of emotion. But the symbolism grew more complex as the path split into three parts. Two of the parts continue the curve, but the third went in the opposite direction, becoming straighter and straighter until it ended abruptly. This symbolized the danger of unrestrained emotion. So the bridge not only represented the combination of the two opposing styles of gardening, it also showed the effects of allowing emotion to overcome reason. That's a lot of meaning packed into a single path. But what if we're not talking about a physical path at all? What if it's a path that can only be seen from above? That's the case at Naschmarkt in Vienna, where the designer dug deep into the earth to create an underground garden. Then he built a viewing platform that ran the length of the garden, offering tourists and sightseers a unique opportunity to look down into the garden below. Like the pots we've discussed earlier, this path is lined with statues and ornaments, and it's also divided into sections, in this case 5. Which are separated by low walls. Each section has its own theme, and it's designed to represent a different stage in life. The first 3 are labeled childhood, youth, and maturity, but the last 2 are left for the viewer to interpret. Some say they represent old age and death, but others argue for wisdom and afterlife. And yet another possibility exists, and it's one that shows how pots don't just deliver a message. They can become the message. We saw in episode 2 how the letter H could be spelled out with the winding path of a grotto. But sometimes the path itself was written out in letters. At Hampton Court Palace, there's a path in the Privy Garden that spells out the name of Queen Mary II. The path is made of bricks, which were originally white, and it winds through the flower beds, just as the name does through the alphabet. Pots and garden beds were carefully chosen to display the wearer's monogram. This practice was especially popular during the Victorian era, when the initials of royalty or nobility were displayed on carriage pots or even in the hedges of public parks. Sometimes these pots were just decorative, but other times they had another layer of meaning. At Ham House in Surrey, England, there is a brick path in the long garden that spells out the initials of Anne of Denmark, the wife of King James I. But it also follows the shape of a pregnant woman. Not only was this meant to be a tribute to the Queen, but it was also a wish for her to conceive a child. After all, at this point, she had borne the king 8 children, all of whom had died in infancy or early childhood. And while this particular path didn't fulfill its wish, a few years later, and gave birth to a son, who became King James II. There are plenty of other examples we could look at, and I'm sure that if you look closely enough at the pots in your own garden, you'll start to see the hidden meanings lurking beneath the surface. Whether it's a straight line or a gentle curve, a winding letter or a cleverly placed monogram, there's always more going on than meets the eye. If you want to learn more about the hidden meanings of gardens, make sure to check out episode 5, The Language of Ornaments, coming soon. Until then, remember, a garden is like a book. It can be read many times and will always have something new to offer. For 5 centuries, the gardens at Castello Sforzesco were the talk of the town, or rather the whisper of the garden. A visitor strolling through this verdant labyrinth heard not birdsong, but coded messages whispered among the rustling leaves and gurgling fountains. If he possessed the key to decipher these secrets, a stroll through the garden became an adventure, a treasure hunt for knowledge. In this episode of our series, we explore how the careful arrangement of plants and pathways functioned as a secret language, conveying hidden meanings to those who knew its rules. Today, we'll consider the punctuation of nature's narrative, how statues and fountains marked pauses, exclamations, and ellipses in the story told by the garden. At the heart of the verbal codes embedded in the design of Renaissance gardens lay a complex system of symbols drawn from the classical world. Marble nymphs hiding shyly behind trees, playful bronze satyrs peeping out from flower beds, all communicated discreetly with those who strolled beneath their knowing gazes. The same was true of the trickling fountains and murmuring waterfalls that interrupted the garden's lush greenery with their rhythmic murmurs. They were not merely decorative elements, but active participants in the conversation between the garden and its visitors. Our journey today takes us through the symbolic language of statues and fountains, those silent storytellers that punctuated the garden's narrative with meaning. Our guide is the renowned Renaissance treatise on garden design, the Orti, or the Garden, written by the Italian monk and Renaissance polymath Bartolomeo Bonvisi around 1480. This seminal work laid out the principles of designing and interpreting Renaissance gardens, emphasizing the importance of symbols and their placement in communicating complex ideas and messages. According to the Orti, statues and fountains, like words in a sentence, had the power to emphasize, clarify, and enrich the meaning of the garden as a whole. The choice of figures and the location of their placement were critical in deciphering the garden's coded language. At Castello Sforzesco, One would begin their exploration amidst the vibrant blooms of flowers and herbs, whose colors and scents carried their own secret messages of love, loyalty, and remembrance. As they moved deeper into the garden, the landscape would shift, giving way to ancient statues emerging from the foliage like old friends sharing whispered secrets. These marble and stone figures, often inspired by classical mythology, were more than just relics of the past. They were articulate members of the garden's social discourse, offering commentary and insights into the very nature of the garden itself. Consider, for example, the dryads, tree nymphs in Greek mythology, whose presence signaled the importance of preserving nature's beauty and harmony. Their stoic presence amid the rustling leaves and blooming flowers underscored the garden's role as a sanctuary, a place where one could commune with nature and find solace from the bustling city. Similarly, the satyrs, playful companions of the gods in the forest, symbolized the joy and delight that gardens could bring. Their mischievous grins and earthy charm hinted at the garden's capacity to both entertain and inspire, to be a place of leisure and contemplation. However, the garden's coded language did not end with these earthly messengers. Gazing heavenward, one might behold the graceful forms of marble angels ascending through the branches, their wings spread wide as if carrying whispers of divine inspiration to the attentive visitor. These celestial beings spoke of the transcendent qualities of the garden, its ability to elevate the human spirit and connect us to something greater than ourselves. Yet it was not just the figures themselves, but also their placement within the garden that added layers of meaning to the coded message. A statue nestled amidst a thicket of fragrant roses might convey the fleeting nature of beauty, while one overlooking a serene pool could symbolize the tranquility that the garden offered. The thoughtful placement of each figure was a deliberate choice by the garden-esque designer to enhance the overall narrative and guide the visitor-esque interpretation. But what of the fountains, those lyrical interjections punctuating the garden's prose? Their rhythmic murmur not only added a soothing melody to the symphony of nature, but also carried its own set of meanings. In the Italian Renaissance garden, the sound of flowing water held a special significance. It was believed to have the power to enhance the clarity and focus of the mind, making the garden not just a place of beauty, but also a space for intellectual pursuits. The gentle trickling of a fountain was thought to stimulate the flow of ideas, while the soft splashing of water against stone symbolized the harmonious balance between the rational and the intuitive aspects of the mind. The position of the fountain within the garden also played a crucial role in its symbolic language. A centrally placed fountain, for instance, might signify the importance of balance and order, while one situated in a secluded grotto could represent the power of introspection and contemplation. Imagine, for example, a visitor approaching a particularly enchanting grotto adorned with cascading vines and crowned by a delicate fountain. As they step into the cool shade of the grotto, the gentle murmur of the fountain envelops them, creating an atmosphere of tranquility and inviting them to pause and reflect. In this sacred space, the visitor is encouraged to turn inward, to contemplate the mysteries of life and the beauty of the natural world around them. As the visitor continues their journey through the garden, they encounter a variety of other fountains, each with its unique melody and message. Some fountains were designed to evoke a sense of playfulness and joy, their cheerful sprays of water dancing in the sunlight and beckoning visitors to partake in the garden-esque festive spirit. Others, however, were more contemplative in nature, their soft trickles inviting visitors to sit quietly and lose themselves in the soothing rhythm of flowing water. These fountains, like the statues nestled among the blooms, were not mere ornaments, but active participants in the garden's coded conversation. They whispered secrets to those who had the ears to listen, inviting them to engage in a dialogue with nature that transcended the boundaries of language. Each fountain, Each statue contributed to a rich tapestry of meaning, creating a dialogue between the inanimate objects and the visitor. It was a conversation written in the universal language of symbolism, one that transcended cultural and linguistic barriers and resonated with the deepest recesses of the human soul. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the garden, our visitor found themselves at the center of a circular parlor, surrounded by a fountain with a bronze satyr playfully peering over its edge. The rhythmic gurgling of the fountain filled the air, harmonizing with the chorus of crickets now joining the symphony of the garden. In this moment, as the day surrendered to twilight, the garden's coded language reached its crescendo. From the whispering leaves of the trees to the lyrical song of the fountains, every element of this intricate design wove together to form a rich, meaningful narrative. It was a story not just of love and longing, but of life, death, rebirth, and the enduring power of nature to heal and inspire. In the final analysis, the garden's secret language was one of inclusion, not exclusion. Its coded messages, though veiled in symbolism, were accessible to anyone who entered its gates and possessed the willingness to decipher its subtle signs. It was an invitation to a dialogue between humanity and the natural world, a conversation that continues to echo through the ages, reminding us of the profound connection we share with the earth and its myriad wonders. Did you find this episode enlightening? What other secrets do you think the garden might be whispering? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe for more intriguing episodes from the Secca, at Language of Renaissance Gardens, and until next time. Happy gardening, and may your days be filled with the sweet music of nature's conversation. Let me take you on a journey through time and introduce you to the fascinating world of secret gardens where nature as beauty conceals a hidden language. Imagine strolling through a meticulously designed landscape, every plant and pathway holding a secret message waiting to be decoded. Welcome to this captivating exploration of the symbolism embedded in the design and layout of Renaissance gardens. Join me as we uncover the stories they tell and the secrets they keep. Before we dive into our exploration, let's take a moment to appreciate the work that goes into bringing these videos to life. Your support means everything to us. So, if you find our content valuable, please consider supporting us. Your contribution will help us continue sharing these stories. Now, let's embark on our adventure through the secret language of Renaissance gardens. Chapter 6, Seasonal Storytelling. In the previous chapters of this series, we've explored the captivating ways Renaissance gardens used geometric shapes, water features, and even architectural elements to convey hidden messages. Each design choice was a brushstroke in a larger artwork, a testament to the era's obsession with symbolism and allegory. Now, it's time to turn our attention to the most elemental aspect of gardening, the plants themselves. As we traverse the garden, we'll follow the year-long dialogue they compose, from spring's hopeful prelude to winter's muted coda. Each season is a new chapter, each flower verse in an intricate poem celebrating life, love, and the human condition. Spring's arrival is like a whispered promise, a delicate prelude to the symphony of the year. The first blooms are tentative, fragile whispers of color amidst the still slumbering landscape. As the days lengthen and warmth returns, the garden awakens with renewed vigor. Buds burst forth, unfurling leaves and blossoms to greet the sun. This verdant rebirth mirrors the Renaissance ideal of human potential, the blossoming of beauty and intellect after the long winter of medieval stagnation. The very act of tending a garden in spring symbolized active participation in God's creation, an engagement that elevated the gardener to a kind of co-creator. Among the earliest messengers of spring are the crocus and the snowdrop, hardy flowers that brave the lingering chill to offer a preview of warmer days to come. Their purple and white hues echoed the spiritual aspiration of the Renaissance, reaching for light and transcendence. The crocus, with its chalice-like bloom, was associated with early Christian mysticism, while the snowdrop, nodding gently in the breeze, symbolized humility and faith in renewal. As the season progresses, a riot of blooms takes over the garden, each variety composing its own message. The tulip, with its goblet-shaped flower, spoke of perfect love and unwavering devotion, its colors ranging from the purest white to the deepest red. The lily, long a symbol of the Virgin Mary, represented innocence and spiritual purity. Meanwhile, the rose, queen of the floral world, offered her timeless message of beauty and love, her intoxicating fragrance masking the thorny realities of existence, a reminder of the bittersweet nature of earthly pleasures. Daffodils danced merrily in the breeze, their golden heads held high, proclaiming joy and celebration. Their cheerful disposition was thought to ward off evil spirits, filling the garden and the soul with light-hearted merriment. In the language of flowers, each blossom wove its own narrative, composing a harmonious tapestry of meaning. This floral alphabet was not merely decorative. It was a silent sermon, a constant commentary on the virtues and vices, the hopes and fears that define the human experience. Summer's rival is like the crescendo of a symphony, a vibrant, exuberant outpouring of life and growth. The garden, now a riot of color and fragrance, offers a feast for the senses and a deeper feast for the mind. As the heat of summer tightens its grip, the garden transforms into a realm of sensual delights. Vines climb and entwine, heavy with clusters of ripening grapes, their leaves rustling secrets in the sultry air. Ornamental trees like the pomegranate, laden with jewel-toned seeds, offer glimpses of hidden treasures beneath a facade of prickly exterior. The abundance of summer speaks of prosperity and bounty, a celebration of the earth's generosity and the rewards of human labor. Amidst this opulence, more delicate blooms hold their ground, each one a testament to resilience and adaptability. Roses, with their velvet petals, continue their timeless discourse on love and beauty, while herbs like lavender and rosemary add their calming notes to the garden symphony. In this season of fullness, even the foliage plays its part. The emerald green of healthy leaves is a universal symbol of Islam, representing nature's harmony and the promise of everlasting life. As the days shorten and a gentle melancholy creeps in, the garden shifts its tone, preparing for winter's inevitable embrace. The late summer and early fall are marked by a bittersweet symphony of hues as nature begins its slow retreat. The fading light seems to deepen the colors, turning the landscape into a painter's palette of nostalgia. Crimson and gold maples blaze against a darkening sky, their fiery hues mirroring the turmoil of emotions that stir within. The gentle rustle of leaves underfoot becomes a susurrus of secrets, each fallen leaf carrying with it memories of summer's exuberance. Amidst this spectacle of fading brilliance, certain flowers defy the season's somber mood. Chrysanthemums, with their daisy-like blooms in shades of bronze and rust, symbolize longevity and resilience in the face of adversity. Their cheerful presence a reminder that even in the darkest days, life persists. The humble sunflower, too, lingers on, its drooping head heavy with seeds that promise new life come springtime. Its journey from eager face of the sun to bowed repose is a silent meditation on the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. Nature's grand finale arrives with winter's frosty breath, transforming the garden into a realm of hushed beauty and quiet contemplation. The vibrant tapestry of summer gives way to a palette of muted tones, silver, gray, and deep blue, mirroring the stillness of the season. Even the hardiest blooms have retreated, leaving behind a landscape that is both stark and serene. In this season of dormancy, the garden seems to withdraw into itself, conserving its energies for the rebirth that awaits. But amidst the stark beauty, symbols of hope endure. Evergreens stand sentinel, their dark green foliage a promise of renewal amidst the wintry expanse. The ilex, with its glossy leaves and bright red berries, symbolizes entrance and offers a joyful forecast of spring's imminent return. As we navigate the labyrinthine paths of the Renaissance garden, we find ourselves immersed in a world where every plant, every flower and every tree is a messenger, a silent storyteller weaving tales of love, faith, hope and resilience. From the timid crocuses of early spring to the robust sunflowers of late summer, each bloom has its own language, its own story to tell. The garden becomes a living, breathing testament to the human condition, reflecting our joys and sorrows, our triumphs and struggles. By understanding the secret language of these blooms, we can read the garden's poetry, verse by verse, blossom by blossom, ultimately composing a profound meditation on the mysteries of existence. As our journey through the secret language of Renaissance gardens comes to an end, I invite you to reflect on the profound symbolism we've encountered in the plants that adorn these timeless landscapes. Each season, with its unique set of blooms, served as a chapter in a larger story. A story that celebrated the beauty, complexity, and wonder of the natural world. The Renaissance garden was more than just an aesthetic delight. It was a living, breathing entity that engaged the senses and sparked the imagination. The plants were not merely decorative elements, but active participants in a silent dialogue, sharing their own narratives with those who paused to listen. By understanding the language of the flowers, the colors, shapes, and fragrances, we can appreciate the depth and complexity of meaning they convey. The garden became a mirror to the human experience, reflecting our hopes, dreams, fears, and aspiration. As we continue our exploration of art history, I encourage you to seek out these hidden stories in the gardens you encounter. Let the blooms become your guides, leading you through a labyrinth of symbolism and delight. Embrace the challenge of decoding their secret language, and in doing so, discover new layers of meaning in these timeless landscapes. If you've enjoyed this video, please remember to support us. Your support allows us to continue bringing these captivating stories to life and ensures that the legacy of artistic brilliance lives on. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the secret language of Renaissance gardens. Until next time, may you find beauty and wonder in every petal, every leaf and every blossom. Our garden is like an open book, all its secrets lying bare for all who care to look. But the garden I'm talking about today wasn't like that at all. For this was a garden with a secret language. A language without words, but one that spoke volumes. It was a language written in the careful arrangement of plants and pathways, of pools and statues, of fountains and walls. It was a language understood only by those in the know. Welcome back to the series. Today, we explore the secret language of Renaissance gardens. If you are new here, join me each week as we uncover the stories behind some of history's most enchanting places. Do give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it, and do stick around to the end because there is a wonderful garden to discover. Now let's continue. Our story begins in 1475 when a young man named Lorenzo de' Medici returned home to Florence after 10 years in exile. Lorenzo had been sent away to ensure his safety. There was a plot to kill him and his brother Giuliano and their father. Cosimo had had enough of this talk of murder and mayhem. He decided to send them packing. First to Venice, then to France, finally returning to Florence once the coast was clear. Lorenzo was now 23 years old. That's just a boy really when you think about it. But he had seen a lot of life, and he had learned many skills. He was a poet, a playwright, a philosopher and a patron of the arts. He also had a rival, Piero de' Medici, who had seized control of Florence while they were away. And so began a game of cat and mouse. Lorenzo played his cards right, waited for the right moment, and seized power from the unsuspecting Piero. He commissioned works of art from the greatest artists of the day. He expanded his family's banking business, and he built a magnificent garden. Its very design was a statement of his philosophy. You see, Lorenzo believed that the key to a good life was balance. He sought harmony between opposites, between the natural and the man-made, between order and freedom, between permanence and change. This philosophy became known as Florentine humanism. And in the Boboli garden, Lorenzo created a physical manifestation of it. He laid out the garden in 3 sections. At the top was the orchard garden, or the garden of the months. Below that was the central garden with its stunning fountain, and then the low garden, which was more wild and natural. Each section had its own entrance, allowing guests to enter and exit without disturbing the tranquility of the other areas. But it was in the central garden where the real action was. Here, amid the flower beds and hedges, were placed 10 marble busts of famous men of antiquity, each positioned at the center of a square. One bust represented a philosopher, another a poet, a third a scientist, and so on. In total, the garden featured 9 of these paired statues, including Pythagoras, the mathematician and the architect Vitruvius, Ptolemy the astronomer, and the painter Apelles, Socrates, the inventor of dialectic, and Hippocrates, the father of medicine. Round the bases of these statues, carefully selected plants were planted. And through their placement, the garden conveyed a secret message. Let's take a closer look at this statue of Pythagoras. He sits at the center of a square surrounded by laurel trees, aromatic herbs, a symbol of poetry and victory. In ancient Rome, laurel wreaths were placed on the heads of poets and other winners of competitions. It was also a symbol of peace and victory. The word laurus in Latin meant both bay leaf and crown. Next to Pythagoras is the philosopher Socrates, flanked by lemon and orange trees, symbols of longevity and happiness. In Greek mythology, oranges grew in the garden of the Hesperides, the nymphs who guarded the garden of the 12 labors of Hercules. Lemon trees were also associated with the goddess Athena. Finally, opposite Pythagoras and Socrates is the sculptor Chelenius, framed bayou and cypress trees, symbols of immortality. Chelenius had sculpted the most beautiful women of antiquity, and in his honor, 2 female statues stood opposite him, the one representing winter, the other summer. The garden not only celebrated the great thinkers of antiquity, but also the Medici family's rivals and enemies. Take, for instance, this statue of the Roman Emperor Augustus. He stands opposite an imposing wall covered in ivy. Ivy was a symbol of masculinity and fidelity, and for emperors, it was a symbol of power. Augustus had been the first emperor of Rome, and under his rule, the empire had reached its greatest extent. He was considered the ideal ruler, a model of how a leader should behave. So it was fitting that he be immortalized in marble in the Boboli garden. And then there was this statue of the Roman general Scipio Africanus, the conqueror of Hannibal in the Second Punic War. He too had been deified. His statue faced a wall adorned with climbing roses, a symbol of love and beauty. But there was another meaning to roses in the Renaissance. They symbolized the dangerous game of courtly love. Roses were beautiful, but they could also have thorns. They could wound those who loved them. They were fragile and needed constant care. And if they weren't loved, they would die. The same could be said of women. They were beautiful and desired, but they could also be cruel and unforgiving. This game of coded messages continued throughout the garden. The plants and statues whispered secrets to those who knew the language. Let's take a closer look at this fountain, the centerpiece of the central garden. It was designed by the architect Buontalenti and took 15 years to complete. It consists of 4 basins, each supported by a giant sea monster. Water cascades down the middle basin, creating a mesmerizing display of light and shadow. Surrounding the fountain are 4 statues representing the 4 seasons. Spring peeks out from behind a tree. Summer lounges on a stone. Autumn gathers fruit from above, and winter struggles to keep up. Above the fountain is a self-portrait of Bontho Donzi as a young man. In the Renaissance, fountains were much more than a source of fresh water. They were a symbol of wealth and power. They were a way of showing off the latest technology, and they were a place for people to meet and socialize. In fact, this fountain was considered to be one of the greatest engineering feats of its time. The water came from an aqueduct built by the Romans in the 1st century AD. This aqueduct supplied water to the entire city of Florence. In the Middle Ages, it had fallen into disrepair, but Bontho Donzi restored it and brought water to the Boboli Garden. In addition to the 4 seasons, the fountain was also decorated with 4 bronze statues, to boys holding fish and to girls holding flowers. These represented the Medici families for children: Giovanni, Isabella, Don Giovanni and Anna Maria Francisca. The inclusion of children in art was a popular theme in the Renaissance. Children were seen as innocent and pure, and they symbolized the Medici family's future. Finally, let's take a closer look at the lower garden. As the name suggests, this was the wildest and most natural part of the garden. It was filled with flowers, shrubs, vines and trees. There were also several grottos and a cascade hidden among the foliage. The lower garden was a place to escape from the hustle and bustle of the central garden. It was a place to relax and enjoy nature. It was also a place to have fun. There were plenty of games to play among the trees, such as hide and seek. But the Medici family had a rival in this game, the powerful Pazzi family. They had tried to kill Lorenzo de' Medici and his brother Giuliano, and now they were at it again. In 1478, a Pazzi family member assassinated the Duke of Milan, and they blamed the Medici for the murder. The Pazzi family fled Florence, and the Medici seized control of the city. To make sure the Pazzi never came back, Lorenzo had this inscription placed on a wall in the lower garden. It read, "The Pazzi shall not enter here." The Medici ruled Florence for 3 centuries, and the Boboli Garden was a symbol of their power. It was a place to show off their wealth and their taste. It was a place to entertain guests and to meet with other leaders. It was also a place to relax and enjoy the fruits of their labor. When the Medici died out in 1737, the garden passed to the Lorraine dynasty. They continued to use it as a symbol of their power, but they also made some changes. They added new plants and statues, and they opened the garden to the public. So what can we learn from the Boboli Garden? What can we learn from the language of the garden? Well, gardens can be more than just a pretty place to relax. They can be a reflection of the society that created them. They can tell us about the values and beliefs of a culture. They can also tell us about the people who designed them. The Boboli Garden tells us that Lorenzo de' Medici was a man who valued balance, order and nature. It tells us that he was a man who loved art and learning. It also tells us that he was a man who was always on guard, always aware of the dangers that lurked around him. I hope you enjoyed our tour of the Boboli Garden. Do let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. And if you want to know more about the Medici, why not check out my book, The Medici, Godfathers of the Renaissance, available now. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time. Have you ever noticed that we still call someone attractive a looker or a fox? People have been comparing their crushes to animals for centuries. But what if we told you there was a way to take that to the next level? Hi, everyone. Welcome to this house. Today, we are exploring the secret language of Renaissance gardens. How carefully arranged plants and pathways conveyed coded messages to visitors. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode. Chapter 8: Floral Allegories of Love. In the Renaissance, the language of flowers, also called floriography, was just as important as the spoken word. To those who understood it, blossoms could convey secret messages and reveal hidden emotions with more impact than any sonnet. This is because flora was thought to influence the character and behavior of those who tended them and interacted with them. So, if a garden was designed to impress, it would have to include the right flowers to send the right message. The most common type of flower used to convey a secret meaning was the double flower, which resulted from a mutation called double dominant, which prevented the bloom from producing seeds. Double flowers were seen as more feminine and delicate, and therefore carried more weight when it came to sending a secret message. Tulips were one of the most popular flowers used in Renaissance gardens, and they carried with them the weight of a secret language all their own. According to legend, tulips originated in the mountains of Central Asia, but by the time the 16th century rolled around, they had found their way into the hands of European botanists. When they first appeared in England, they caused quite a stir and were described as being as numerous and varied as precious stones. By the mid-17th century, tulip mania was sweeping the Netherlands, where some bulbs sold for 10 times the average annual salary. And today, they remain one of the most popular flowers in the world. Tulips come in a wide variety of colors, each with its own special meaning. Red tulips symbolize perfect or deep love, while yellow tulips represent cheerful thoughts and friendship. An unexpected but not unwelcome flirtation could be signified by a purple tulip, while a bouquet of pink tulips could mean caring and affection without necessarily implying romantic interest. If you wanted to confess your undying devotion, you could do worse than presenting your beloved with a green tulip, which signifies eternity, or a white tulip, which stands for innocence and purity. But be careful. If you want to tell someone you're thinking of them, you will have to wait until late spring. That's because during the early blooming season, the flower's closed petals conceal the lover's tongue. It is only when the bloom opens fully that the message can be read. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the Aztec Empire in the 16th century, they were quick to notice that the local population had a particular fondness for a small purple flower that grew wild in the hills near Mexico City. They brought it back to Europe, where it became known as the pansy or viol flower, a flower that has since become synonymous with modesty and humility. Violets grow in a wide range of colors, including blue, white and yellow. However, it is the purple variety that carries the strongest message when it comes to matters of the heart. For Renaissance lovers, the violet sent a clear message of unrequited love, as well as longing for reunion. This is likely due to the flower's historical association with pagan deities associated with the underworld, such as Persephone and Proserpina. Despite their melancholy associations, violets were still considered a sign of good luck in love and were often given as gifts to sweethearts and prospective brides. During the Victorian era, when the language of flowers was at its height, the violet came to represent faithfulness and loyalty. In addition, each part of the flower held its own meaning. While the entire blossom symbolized love, the leaves represented friendship, and the scent stood for modesty. Even the name pansy was thought to derive from the French word penser, meaning to think. As a result, giving someone a pansy was a subtle way of telling them you were thinking of them without actually saying so. In Greek mythology, Hyacinthus was a handsome Spartan prince who was loved by the god Apollo. However, their relationship came to an abrupt end when Apollo accidentally struck Hyacinthus in the head with a discus, killing him instantly, grief-stricken over his best friend's death. Apollo transformed Hyacinthus into a flower, which was named after him, in Renaissance gardens. The hyacinth was associated with the ancient Greek god of desire and was believed to have aphrodisiac properties. This is why it was often planted near places where young people gathered, such as schools and universities. The hyacinth's long, narrow petals made it difficult to decipher the message written on them, which added to the air of mystery surrounding them. The flower typically had to be peeled open like a layer cake to reveal its innermost secrets. In France, hyacinths were linked to the goddess Venus, the Roman equivalent of Aphrodite, and were said to help those who wished to find true love. The flower's ability to inspire passion and desire made it a popular choice among gardeners looking to attract a mate. Other double flowers such as carnation, roses, and rhododendrons were also used in Renaissance gardens to send secret messages. Each type of blossom had its own unique meaning and could be combined with other flowers to create complex messages. Carnations, for example, were thought to purify the air and were often planted near pots and entrances. They could also be used to express gratitude, affection, and even remembrance. Roses, of course, have long been associated with love and beauty. And in the Renaissance, they were used to convey everything from passionate desire to platonic affection. White roses symbolized innocence and purity, while red roses meant courage, blood, and martyrdom. Rhododendrons were thought to protect against evil spirits and were often planted near graveyards. They could also be used to express admiration, gratitude, and even respect. While the language of flowers was universal, there were regional variations that developed over time. For example, in France, the lily of the valley was associated with the Virgin Mary, while in England it was linked to the goddess Flora. Similarly, in Italy, the cypress was seen as a symbol of death and mourning, while in Germany it was associated with the god Pan. Despite these regional differences, the overall meaning of the flowers remained constant throughout Europe. The use of flowers to convey secret messages was not limited to the Renaissance. It continued well into the Victorian era and can still be seen in modern-day flower shops. If you order a bouquet of flowers for your sweetheart, chances are that the florist will include a few double flowers in the arrangement, such as ranunculus, anemones, and peonies. These blooms carry with them the weight of tradition and add a touch of romance to any bouquet. So, the next time you receive a bouquet of flowers, take a close look at the blooms and see if you can decode their secret meanings. You may be surprised at what you find. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode. Until then, I'll see you next time on this house. Chapter 9, Private Groves and Hidden Confessions. Imagine strolling through a garden, not just admiring the flowers and trees, but each step you take revealing a secret message, a hidden meaning only you're meant to know. Sounds like a fairy tale, doesn't it? Well, it's not. It's the reality of Renaissance gardens. They weren't just beautiful landscapes. They were storytellers without words, whispering tales of love, faith, and even scandal. These gardens, with their perfectly placed plants and winding pots, were like secret codes, ciphers that revealed themselves to those who understood the language. Today, we invite you to become fluent in this language. We'll explore the nooks and crannies of these secret gardens, decode their hidden meanings, and uncover the stories they hold. So grab your magnifying glass, put on your detective hats, because we're about to embark on a journey where every flower, every path has a story to tell. Now let's dive into the heart of our story. In the tapestry of Renaissance gardens, there existed an element of design that held a special place in its layout, the secluded bosquet. These bosquets were more than just clusters of trees or flower beds. They were carefully crafted spaces designed to envelop visitors in an atmosphere of privacy and intimacy. Their strategic placement within the garden allowed them to serve a variety of purposes, from providing quiet retreats for a contemplation to offering discreet spots for private meetings. However, among the many types of bosquets found in Renaissance gardens, one stood out for its unique function, the confessional. The confessional bosquet was a specifically designed intimate space intended for whispered confessions and secret rendezvous, tucked away in a secluded part of the garden, often near a wall or hedge. These confessives offered a sanctuary where visitors could unburden themselves or engage in clandestine meetings without prying. Eyes or ears. Picture this. A couple deeply in love, perhaps with a romance that society frowns upon. They steal moments together in a secluded grove, their love story unfolding amidst the rustle of leaves and the sweet scent of blossoms. Or imagine a young woman waiting to confess her undying love to her beloved. She finds solace in a bosquet, its sheltering branches muffling her tears and hopes for a future together. These are the kinds of stories that unfolded in the shadowy embrace of a Renaissance garden's confessional. But what made these spaces so effective in conveying such intense emotions? The answer lay in the careful design and symbolism woven into each bosquet. Let us delve deeper into the language of the Renaissance garden and understand how these green sanctuaries became vessels of love, faith, and sometimes scandal. The key to understanding the secretive nature of the confessional bosquet lies in the very structure of these intimate spaces. Often, they were designed as circular or oval shapes, creating a sense of enclosure and privacy. This circularity symbolized the secrecy and confidentiality associated with confession. Visitors entering the bosquet would be enveloped by a sense of solitude and discretion, ensuring that their whispers remain safe within the leafy enclosure. The choice of plants and their placement played a crucial role in establishing this sense of privacy and intimacy. Tall, dense shrubs and trees were strategically planted around the periphery of the bosquet, forming a natural screen to block the view from outside. This verdant barrier ensured that conversations and activities within the confessional remained hidden from prying eyes, adding to the allure and secrecy of these spaces. The inner sanctum of the confessional bosquet was often adorned with a variety of flowering plants and bushes whose blossoms carried symbolic meanings. For instance, the white lilac, with its delicate fragrance, symbolized purity and innocence, while the red rose represented deep love and passion. These plants became integral to the emotional narrative of the bosquet, enhancing the atmosphere of romance, secrecy, and at times, yearning. In addition to the visual and olfactory allure, the auditory experience within the confessional bosquet was equally important. The soft rustling of leaves created a soothing ambience that not only masked the sounds of the outside world, but also provided a gentle backdrop for whispered conversations. This natural acoustic intimacy further contributed to the sense of privacy and encouraged visitors to open up within the sheltering greenery. Furthermore, the very architecture of the confessional bosquet often incorporated elements that directed visitors' movements and shaped their experiences. Winding paths and arbours added to the sense of mystery and intrigue, guiding visitors through a maze of green where each turn revealed new vistas of love, faithful hidden desires. These carefully designed paths symbolize the journey of the heart, leading individuals deeper into the emotional core of the garden story. One remarkable example of a confessional bosquet in action can be found in the famous gardens of Château d'Issaux in France. Imagine a young nobleman seeking solace in this secluded spot after a heated argument with his family over his forbidden love for a commoner. He finds refuge in the confessional bosquet, its dense foliage providing him with the privacy he needs to pour out his heart to the beloved who waits patiently within. The air is thick with unspoken emotions, the sweet scent of lilies mingling with the tension of his secret love. This garden becomes a silent witness to his undying devotion, a testament to the power of love in the face of societal barriers. Another compelling example unfolds in the Italian Renaissance gardens of Villa d'Este in Tivoli. Picture a group of influential noblemen engaged in heated debates about religion and philosophy during the Council of Trent. Amidst the fervor of theological discussions, they seek respite in the tranquil confines of the confessional bosque. Here, amidst the fragrant orange blossoms and the murmuring fountains, they find a moment of calm. The garden's peaceful ambience allows for introspection and honest discourse, creating a memorable interlude in their otherwise contentious duties. As we continue to explore these enchanting gardens, keep in mind that each tree, bush, and flower is more than just a pretty sight. They're characters in a silent movie, whispering stories of love, faith, and hidden desires. But our exploration of the secretive language of Renaissance gardens isn't over yet. There's another fascinating aspect waiting to be uncovered in our next episode. We'll reveal how the very pathways in these gardens carried their own messages, guiding visitors along routes that mirror the twists and turns of love and life. Until then, remember, every garden holds a secret, and in the Renaissance, those secrets bloomed in every leaf and whispered in every breeze. Stay tuned and keep your eyes sharp, because in these gardens, every step can lead to a surprising revelation. When we think of famous gardens today, we may be picturing perfectly manicured lawns, neatly trimmed hedges, and rows of colorful petunias spilling over window boxes. But the gardens of the Italian Renaissance were more than just carefully cultivated patches of land planted for aesthetic pleasure. They were also, believe it or not, one of the few places where people could go to get the gossip. Like, if your favorite soap opera was set in a secret garden, what would you see? Perhaps two lovers meeting in the moonlight, or a jealous suitor confronting his unfaithful partner. Maybe some poisonous plants being surreptitiously sprinkled with arsenic. Well, if you found yourself strolling through the manicured grounds of a wealthy family's Italian villa during the Renaissance, you might have witnessed something like any of those scenarios, because like the characters in our favorite modern-day dramas, the plants themselves had plenty of secrets to tell. Welcome back to the series The Secret Language of Renaissance Gardens, where every plant has a message to deliver. In Chapter 10, we're going to examine how dukes and duchesses used their gardens to broadcast alliances, rivalries, and diplomatic overtures without uttering a word. Just as the wealthy elite of Renaissance Italy dressed up to the nines when they went out into public, they also took great pains to present themselves well to their guests, especially when they welcomed them into their homes. And one of the first places that visitors would see after entering a house was the garden. As we discussed in previous episodes, the gardens of this era were often laid out in geometric shapes with statues, fountains, and carefully chosen plants that were meant to convey the family's wealth and power. But there was more going on in these green spaces than met the eye. What if we told you that this formal garden could reveal a noble family's political loyalties and connections? Sounds intriguing, doesn't it? Well, let's take a closer look at how this clever code worked. But first, if you love everything about the Italian Renaissance, then you need to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Alright, let's get to it. Imagine you're a nobleman visiting the home of a duke or duchess. After paying your respects to the host inside, you step out into the courtyard only to find the stunning garden laid out before you. Straight ahead is a hedge maze with neat paths winding between its hedges. To the right, you see a fountain surrounded by lush flowers, and to the left, a statue of Mars, the Roman god of war. You can't help but notice, too, that several noble families' coats of arms are displayed prominently on urns and pedestals throughout the garden. Now, without even saying a word, the owners have already told you a lot about themselves. Those perfectly straight pots represent order and control, showing that the family that lives here is well organized and disciplined. The flowers represent beauty and wealth, while the statue of Mars shows that the family is powerful and, well, maybe a little bit intimidating. And those coats of arms, they show which other important families the hosts are allied with. By planting these symbols of power, wealth and loyalty all round their garden, the Duke and Duchess wanted visitors to know who they were and what they stood for. It was like a visual introduction that said, "Hi, we're the powerful noble family. We're rich, we're connected, and you should probably bow down before us." It wasn't subtle, but it was effective. But there was another way that Renaissance Italians used their gardens to send messages to visitors. Sometimes they would include secret symbols and designs in the layout of their garden pots, which were usually made of gravel, brick or stone. By arranging the stones in particular ways, they could make shapes that had special meanings. For example, a circle could show eternity, or a triangle could represent faith in the Holy Trinity. Other times, the path designs were more complicated, like a maze, which showed that the owner was smart and in control. Or a design called a broderie, which had lots of twists and turns that looked like an open book. This design was popular with monks who saw it as a symbol of the journey through life or the search for knowledge. Each rock monolith was like a silent ambassador, speaking volumes about the family it represented without saying a word. In fact, these stony emissaries could do even more than that. Sometimes they were inscribed with secret messages or codes that only the most discerning visitors would understand. Imagine coming across a path that's been ranged to look like a sword or a shield. These symbols were often used by military families to show their strength and bravery. And if you were a rival family, you would know not to mess with them. Or picture coming across a path shaped like a flower or a heart. These belonged to the romantic families who prized beauty and love above all else. In this case, the garden paths were like secret agents carrying important messages from the family inside to their guests outside. They were silent, but they spoke volumes. If you thought that was impressive, wait till you hear about another cool thing that Renaissance Italians did with their garden pots. They sometimes used them to show off their knowledge of math and geometry. These folks loved to show off how smart they were by making pots that were as interesting as they were beautiful. Imagine strolling through a garden and coming across a path that has been laid out in the shape of a perfect circle or a square. It might seem simple, but creating these shapes required a lot of math skills and planning. Or maybe you'd come across a path that looks like a piece of pie or a sphere. These shapes were really popular because they showed how the people who designed them understood complex mathematical ideas like pi. They were basically like secret codes that said, "Hey, we're super smart and we know a lot of math." But it wasn't just about showing off. These fancy pots were also a way to make the gardens more fun and interesting to explore. By adding these cool shapes, the owners created a kind of puzzle for their guests to figure out. It was like a game of hide and seek where the garden pots were the clues. Visitors would wander around the garden trying to figure out the shapes and patterns, which made the whole experience more exciting and memorable. Plus, it was a chance to show off their own knowledge and see if they could figure out the secret codes hidden in plain sight. So, if you ever visit a Renaissance garden, don't just admire the beauty. Look closely at the pots and see if you can spot the secret shapes and codes. Who knows? You might just discover a hidden message from the past. One of the most common ways that Renaissance Italians used their gardens to communicate was by planting specific types of flowers and herbs. You see, just like today, flowers were a popular way to show how you felt about things. For example, a red rose meant love, while a yellow rose meant friendship. A white lily could mean peace and unity, while a violet meant humility and simplicity. Even the colors of flowers had secret meanings. Bright colors like red and yellow meant courage and happiness, while softer colors like blue and pink meant sadness and quietness. But it wasn't just about the color of the flower. The shape and number of petals also had secret meanings. Lots of petals meant lots of choices, while fewer petals meant a simple life. Also, the way the flowers were arranged could also send a secret message. Flowers that grew in groups meant teamwork and community, while flowers that grew alone meant independence and freedom. And there were even secret meanings for the smells of flowers. Flowers that smelled sweet meant love and romance, while flowers that smelled fresh and clean meant honesty and purity. These secret meanings were like a secret language that only those who knew the code could understand. It was a way for people to talk about important ideas and feelings without actually saying a word. Imagine walking through a garden and seeing a row of yellow roses with lots of petals. You would know that this meant friendship and many choices. Or if you saw a single blue flower growing by itself, you would know that it meant being independent and having few choices. It was like a secret message hidden in plain sight. And these secret meanings were everywhere. In the shape of the flowers, the number of petals, the color of the blooms, and even the smell of the blossoms. It was like a secret language that allowed people to talk about important ideas and feelings without actually saying a word. So, the next time you find yourself in a Renaissance garden, take a closer look at the flowers and see if you can uncover their secret meanings. Who knows? You might just learn something new about the history of flowers and secret codes. And hey, while you're at it, why not learn a little bit about the history of art as well? There's more to these gardens than meets the eye. They may seem like carefully manicured green spaces meant for quiet contemplation, but they were actually some of the most popular spots in town for gossiping and co. Yeah, these lush landscapes were a hotbed for scandal, intrigue, and diplomacy. Because believe it or not, the plants themselves had secrets to tell if you knew how to listen. That's right. The arrangement of flowers, shrubs, and even the pots between them were all carefully designed to convey secret messages. And by decoding them, we can find out what the royals were really saying to each other through their gardens. So grab your magnifying glass and your decoder ring because we're about to uncover the truth behind these botanical beauty secrets. Welcome back to the series, where we explore the secret language of Renaissance gardens. In our last episode, we uncovered how the famous long border at Chatsworth was more than just an aesthetic pleasure. No. It was a clever way for the gardener, John Rock, to show off his royal colors. But there's so much more to gardens than borders. Today, we're taking a closer look at two other garden features that had people talking in the 16th and 17th centuries, the jewel box orangeries, and those intricate knot gardens. You'll be surprised at the hidden meanings behind these seemingly simple elements. Orangeries are like the OG greenhouse. Back then, citrus trees were all the rage, and having one in your garden was like having the latest fashion accessory. But these weren't just any old trees. No, sir. These were dwarf trees carefully pruned into shapes like pyramids, cones, or spheres. And let me tell you, it took years of training to get them just right. Why go to all the trouble, you ask? Well, besides looking fancy, it was also a way to show off your wealth and power. After all, Not everyone could afford to hire a team of gardeners to fuss over these temperamental trees. So, if you had one, everyone would know you had some serious cash to spare. Plus, these trees were so prized that wealthy folks would even rent them just for special occasions like a wedding or a party. Talk about a status symbol. And if you really wanted to impress your guests, you could take things up a notch by putting your orange trees in a purpose-built orangery. Now, these structures were like greenhouses on stilts, big enough to house dozens of trees and usually made of glass to let the light shine in. Some were even heated so the trees could grow year-round. Having an orangery was like having your own private citrus grove, no matter where you lived. But there was more to these trees than met the eye. See, during the Renaissance, people were obsessed with alchemy, the idea that you could turn base metals like lead into gold. And they believed that certain plants like oranges had special powers. People thought that eating or drinking things made with oranges could cure all sorts of ailments and even prolong your life. Of course, none of that was true. But hey, who needs facts when you have fancy pants theories? Now, alchemists were also into astrology, and they believed that different plants grew best under certain signs of the zodiac. This meant that the placement of your orange trees wasn't just about aesthetics. It was also about getting the cosmic vibes just right. For example, placing an orange tree under the sign of Leo, the lion, was supposed to bring courage and strength to anyone who saw it. By following these rules, gardeners were essentially creating living pieces of art that were not only pleasing to the eye, but also had hidden meanings and powers. So next time you see an ornately shaped orange tree, remember it's more than just a pretty plant. It's a secret message from the Renaissance alchemists. Meanwhile, not gardens, they were the Instagram of the Renaissance. These intricate designs were all the rage among the elite, and they loved to show off their skills by creating these crazy patterns using low-growing plants like herbs and flowers. Talk about green with envy. These gardens weren't just for show though. There was a lot of symbolism going on, and the people who designed them were basically sending secret messages without saying a word. Let me explain. The plants themselves had hidden meanings. For example, using cypress trees in a knot garden might seem like a weird choice, but these dark green evergreens symbolized death and mourning. Meanwhile, flowers like roses and lilies were used to represent love and beauty. By mixing and matching plants, designers could create all sorts of complex messages and ideas. Knot gardens were also a status symbol because they took a lot of time and money to create. Not only did they require a skilled gardener to maintain the intricate design, but they also needed regular watering and fertilizing to keep the plants looking their best. Plus, you had to be rich enough to afford all the materials needed to build the garden walls and pots. Only the elite could afford this kind of extravagance. So showing off a fancy knot garden was a subtle way of saying, yeah, I'm rich and cultured. Thank you very much. And let's not forget about the shape of the garden itself. Knot gardens were often designed in geometric shapes like squares or circles, which symbolized order and balance. They were also sometimes laid out along astrological lines, with certain plants placed according to their supposed powers and influences. For example, a circle might represent the heavens, while a square might represent the four elements of earth, air, fire, and water. These secret codes and symbols were a way for the wealthy to express their beliefs and values without drawing too much attention to themselves. After all, religion could be a touchy subject back in the day, and you never knew who might be watching and waiting to criticize your choices. So instead of making a big show of their faith, the elite used subtle methods like knot gardens to express their beliefs and connect with others who shared their values. It was like their own secret language. The royal family got in on the action too. King Henry VIII's famous garden at Hampton Court Palace was a masterpiece of Renaissance design. It featured all the must-have elements of the era, including an orangery filled with exotic citrus trees and a knot garden that would make any Instagram influencer drool. But there was more to the garden than met the eye. The king's personal seal was cleverly incorporated into the design. Talk about a subtle flex. Tucked away in the garden was a maze with the royal coat of arms in the center. This was like a secret handshake between Henry and his subjects. If you recognized the symbols, you knew you were in the presence of royalty. But if you weren't in the know, well, you just think you were lost in a really confusing hedge maze. Maze? That's right. The royal family was basically giving a sneak peek into their inner circle by displaying their seal and coat of arms in such an unexpected place. It was like a secret password that said, if you understand this, you're one of us. And let's be real, what's more exciting than feeling like you're part of the inner circle? In fact, the king's seal was used as a cipher, a secret code that only the initiated could understand. By placing the seal in prominent areas around the garden, Henry was able to communicate with his staff and visitors without anyone else knowing what he was saying. It was like a game of hide and seek, but with secret messages instead of a piece of cake. This was especially handy when he was planning something sneaky. Like, say, getting rid of one of his wives. He could slip a message to his servants telling them to meet him in the garden at midnight without tipping off anyone else. Sure, his wives might have known what was up, but the rest of the kingdom was none the wiser. Thanks to the secret language of the garden, Henry was able to keep his cards close to his chest and maintain the illusion that everything was just hunky-dory in his royal court. So don't underestimate the power of a well-placed seal or the intrigue of a secret code. When you're strolling through a historic garden, remember that there might be more there than meets the eye. Now, it's time for you to decode the hidden meanings in these amazing gardens for yourself. So why not plan a trip to one of these fascinating places and see what secrets you can uncover? Just remember, when you're exploring these royal retreats, it's important to do it respectfully. After all, you're stepping into the same gardens that kings and queens once strolled through. So tread lightly and see what messages the plants and pathways have in store for you. You never know what kind of royal secrets you might uncover. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the secret language of gardens. Did you learn anything new or surprising? What are your favorite garden design elements? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating content. Until next time, happy gardening and decoding. It's a tale as old as time. A secret so well hidden it was thought lost forever. Now brought back from the dead by our intrepid heroine who will unlock its mysteries once and for all. Well, perhaps not quite that dramatic. But what if I told you there is evidence that at least one Renaissance garden used a kind of secret language? What if someone had planted an entire message in plain sight for us to find today? Welcome to my channel, It's me. And in this video, we're going to see how carefully arranged plants and pathways may have conveyed coded messages to those who knew where to look. We've talked about the many ways gardens can convey secret messages before, from the subtle symbolism of plants to the geometry of their layout. But unlike those techniques, which are largely intuitive and rely on the observer sharing the same cultural context as the plants, the system we're going to explore today is much more like a cipher. In other words, a secret code. Our story begins in the Italian Renaissance, which saw an explosion of intellectual curiosity, artistic creativity, and scientific discovery. It was a time when thinkers were rediscovering ancient texts and reimagining the possibilities of the natural world. And it was in this atmosphere that a group of 16th century scholars and poets began to speculate that the designs of some Italian gardens weren't just beautiful patterns to relax among, but actually encoded messages written in stone and plants. Now, I should be clear that there is no surviving evidence of such a system being used in England, although it is possible that something similar occurred here too. So we'll be focusing on Italy for this video. According to these thinkers, each plant species was assigned to a letter of the alphabet, like a sort of botanical cryptogram. By planting certain species in specific locations, a gardener could spell out messages or even whole texts. For instance, a path running through a row of cypress trees might spell out a name or a famous saying. But who came up with this idea, and what was it for? We don't know for sure, but it's thought to have originated with a man named Giovanni Battista Palumba, who wrote a book called The Labyrinth, published in 1556. The work was a treatise on garden design that discussed many aspects of creating an outdoor space, including its shape, size, and features. Within this book, he proposed the intriguing possibility that plants could be used to form letters and spell out messages. Whether or not Palumba actually invented the concept of the cipher garden, he certainly helped to popularize the idea. Another proponent was a man named Luca Faedi, an Italian architect and theorist who wrote extensively about the importance of symbolism in garden design. In his book, The Theatre of the World, published in 1572, he expanded on Palumba's ideas and provided a more detailed explanation of how the code worked. Faedi's system was more complex than Palumba's and included a wider variety of plants. He assigned numbers to each species, which could then be converted into letters to spell out words. This system allowed for a greater flexibility in creating messages and enabled the encoding of more complex ideas. In addition to these two theorists, the most famous practitioner of the cipher garden was a man named Bernardino Luini, an Italian painter, sculptor and architect who designed several famous gardens in and around Florence. Unfortunately, none of these gardens survive today, so we have no physical evidence to examine. However, descriptions of them and the fact that they were heavily influenced by theorists like Folletti suggest that the coded garden wasn't just an abstract idea, but a real and living thing. So how does this secret garden cipher work? Well, let's take a look at one of the surviving examples of the code. This small painting shows a garden designed by Bernardino Luini for the Villa del Principe in Genoa. At first glance, it looks like any pretty garden with symmetrical beds, clipped hedges, and plenty of flowers. But if we look closer and imagine the garden planted according to this design, we can start to decipher the message hidden in plain sight. As we saw, Fate believed that each plant could be assigned a number. Using this key, we can convert the location of each flower bed into a letter and thus spell out a word. But what word? If we look closely, we can see the answer. Tucked away in the middle of the garden, almost invisible, is a small patch of flowers. And in the center of that, a single cypress tree. The combination spells out the word. Amor mio means my love in Italian. Now, this is just one example of many. Another painting shows a garden with the inscription Liscia, a synonym for happiness. Yet another depicts a garden with the word Salus Populi, meaning the health of the people. These coded messages were thought to have multiple layers of meaning, both literal and symbolic. For instance, a garden might have been designed to convey a political message or a personal motto, but they also hinted at deeper philosophical or spiritual truths. For example, the presence of certain plants could allude to classical mythology or Christian symbolism. By understanding the coded message, the viewer could engage with the garden on a more profound level and appreciate the intellectual playfulness of its design. Now that we understand the basics of the cipher garden, you may be wondering how accurate these inscriptions were. After all, it wouldn't do for a coded message to be easily misinterpreted. And while we don't have any surviving evidence to answer this question definitively, we can make some educated guesses. Firstly, the system relied on the viewer having a copy of the key, which would have been rare. Only the designer and the intended recipient would have had access to it. Secondly, the code was based on a numerical system, which introduced an element of complexity. Each number had to be converted into a letter, which increased the potential for error. Additionally, the code required careful planning and precision. Even a slight variation in the spacing between plants could alter the message. This suggests that whoever commissioned a coded garden would have done so with accuracy in mind. Finally, the code was not meant to be deciphered from a distance. Viewers had to be close up to read the message, suggesting that it was meant to be seen only by those who were let in on the secret. This leads us to a fascinating question. Were there any secret gardens in England that used a similar cipher to convey hidden messages? While there's no direct evidence of this, it's certainly possible. Remember, we don't have any surviving examples of cipher gardens from Italy. It's entirely possible that something similar happened here too. What's more, English gardens were often designed with secrecy in mind, such as the famous labyrinth at Hampton Court Palace, which was designed to hide the royal family from unwanted suitors. Could a clever gardener have used a cipher garden to send a secret message to the Queen? Maybe. Unfortunately, we may never know for sure, but the possibility remains an intriguing one nonetheless. After all, if an Italian garden can speak to us across the centuries, who's to say an English one couldn't do the same? The coded gardens of the Italian Renaissance are a fascinating example of how plants and their arrangement can convey secret messages. While there's no surviving evidence that something similar was done in England, it's certainly possible. The cipher garden is a testament to the creativity and ingenuity of the Renaissance thinkers who sought to unlock the secrets of the natural world. Their playful use of code and symbolism continues to captivate us today, reminding us that even the most ordinary things can hold extraordinary meanings. And now it's time to hear from you. Do you think coded gardens were used in England? Why or why not? Let us know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and until next time, happy gardening. Alright, class, time for your pop quiz. What do all these gardens have in common? Well, if you said they're all located in Europe and were designed between roughly 1400 and 1600, you'd be correct. But that's not what I was thinking of. More specifically, each one is laid out according to the principles of a secret language, a type of botanical code where the placement of plants along paths and the shapes of those paths themselves convey hidden messages to anyone who knows how to read them. These so-called discourse gardens were all the rage during the Renaissance, a period when Europe's obsession with classical antiquity was at fever pitch. The Romans had famously used coded messages in their gardens, like the famous example of a path at the Villa d'Esneo Road, where two lovers could meet up by walking down the middle path. The only one of three that didn't dead end. So naturally, when it came time to redesign European gardens, their ancient Roman forebears were top of mind. And just as Roman emperors had sent secret lovers' letters via carrier pigeons or eunuchs, as we learned in Chapter 7, so too did Renaissance elites use coded messages to communicate their own clandestine correspondence. This time, it was through plants. But what did these codes look like in practice? How were secret messages encoded in flowers? And why don't more people know about this today? That last question is pretty easy to answer. These coded gardens fell out of fashion following the French Revolution, which swept away so much of Europe as aristocratic culture, and ushered in new political values that placed less emphasis on private pleasures and more on the rights of the common man. But by then, the secret language of gardens had already been all but forgotten, and no one bothered to record or decipher these codes, so most of them were lost forever. However, in recent years, a few historians have been working to revive the botanical dictionary of Renaissance gardens. And that's what we'll be exploring in this chapter. To explain how these codes work, let's take a look at one of the most famous examples, the Garden of the Villa Lonti in Italy. Like many Renaissance gardens, its main feature is a large rectangular pool surrounded on four sides by an arcade of arches and columns. But unlike the other three sides, the north side has a long, narrow opening, a secret entrance to a path that cuts across the entire garden from west to east. In fact, there are two paths cutting through the garden laterally. They meet at right angles and form a giant cross, which makes them even more prominent. Each path is lined with trees and shrubs that were carefully selected for their symbolic meaning, allowing the garden to function like a giant cipher. At the western terminus of the paths is a fountain decorated with the astrological signs of Cancer and Leo, symbolizing the element of water. From here, the paths run east until they reach another fountain representing Earth, where the signs Virgo and Libra are carved on its base. The path on the south side of the pool contains a third fountain decorated with the signs of air, Gemini and Aquarius. Finally, the northern path reaches a fourth fountain representing fire, inscribed with the signs of Aries and Sagittarius. If we consult the astrological manual used by Renaissance Italians, we can see that the signs of fire correspond to the cardinal points of the compass, while the signs of earth correspond to the intermediate points. Meanwhile, the signs of air and water are symbols of the elements themselves. As such, any visitor to the garden who knew the code would know that the fountains lining the cardinal points of the compass symbolized fire, while those lining the intermediate points symbolized earth. In other words, the pots were symbolic representations of the four elements, which were thought to govern all of nature. So the crossing of two paths marked the union of two elements, while the fountains represented their meeting point. It's all quite abstract and philosophical, much like the rest of Renaissance culture, which was obsessed with harnessing the power of symbolism. At first glance, the pots and fountains of the Villa Lonti might just look like pretty landscaping. But once you realize that each plant and structure has a secret meaning, the garden takes on a whole new level of complexity. Of course, as our teacher has explained many times before, the Renaissance obsession with secrecy extended to nearly every aspect of life. And these coded gardens are no exception. We know about the Villa Lonti because the Marquis de Sade, an aristocrat who owned the garden in the early 18th century, left behind a detailed account of its layout. But we don't know who originally designed it or when. Nor do we know for sure if it ever had a secret language at all. All we have is speculation. So far, no coded message has been definitively proven to exist in the garden of the Villa Lonti. But that hasn't stopped historians from trying to decipher other gardens. Thanks to meticulous drawings and written descriptions left behind by 19th century English travelers, we know exactly how the garden at Chatsworth House looked. Like the Villa Lonti, it was an Italianate design featuring a central pool surrounded by four-sided parterres or flower beds. Unlike the Villa Lonti, however, the pots cut through all of the parterres, creating a grid of intersecting pots. At the center of the grid was a single statue. Historians believe that the Chatsworth Garden also functioned as a kind of cipher, but instead of astrological signs, its plants were ranged according to the 7 liberal arts, a medieval classification of subjects that included grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music. To test this theory, one researcher planted the same species mentioned in the original design alongside the garden-esque pots, and then walked the pots in different combinations to see what messages emerged. The results were promising. When the garden was first created, the arrangement of plants allowed visitors to walk a continuous circuit around the outer rim of the potter without repeating any combination of plants. However, the pots have since been modified, making the original route impossible to follow. Nonetheless, researchers were able to discover several meaningful pairings and even some potential love trysts. Encoded in the original design, the best documented example of a coded garden, however, can be found at So Palace near Paris, where the pots are said to have formed secret messages, including a dedication to the Sun King, Louis XIV. Unfortunately, that garden is long gone, having been destroyed during the French Revolution. But thanks to surviving plans, we know exactly how it worked. This garden, too, was based on a regular geometric design with a central pool and crossing pots. In this case, the pots were straight and intersected at right angles, forming 8 segments in total. But unlike the other examples we've looked at so far, the plants weren't ranged according to a predetermined code. Instead, the plants themselves were the code. To understand how this worked, let's imagine we have a simple alphabet with only 4 letters: A, B, C, D. If we assign the letter to the plant boxwood, B to U, C to hornbeam, and D to L, and then decide that the letter will always be planted on the left side of the path and the letter be on the right, we can encode a message in the order in which we plant the trees. If we want to spell out the word cat, for example, we would plant a boxwood tree on the left side of the path, followed by an elm tree on the right. Then another boxwood on the left, and finally a hornbeam on the right. Someone who knows our code will see that the word cat spelled out in plants is located on the south side of the palace, and will therefore conclude that cat means south. Using this method, entire sentences could be spelled out using dozens of plant species. The same sentence would then be repeated on the opposite side of the garden, and whoever received the message would simply have to match the plants to their coded meanings. Although the system was theoretically complex enough to send secret messages, we don't know if it was ever actually used. After all, constructing a coded garden required great effort and expense. And if the purpose of the code was to communicate a secret message, there was always the risk that someone else would crack it. So it is possible that the elaborate gardens at So Palace were simply meant to impress visitors with their geometric beauty rather than convey any coded messages at all. Regardless, this type of garden fell out of fashion following the French Revolution, which wasn't surprising given that the revolution's main purpose was to tear down the very type of aristocratic culture that gave rise to secret gardens. But in recent years, a few amateur historians have tried to reconstruct these lost ciphers, often with the help of computer modeling. Although none of these reconstructions have been definitive, they give us a tantalizing glimpse into the kinds of secret languages that might have thrived during the Renaissance. As we close our lesson today, class, I want you all to think about how the secret language of gardens relates to other aspects of Renaissance culture. We've already touched on the Renaissance obsession with secrecy, but think also about the importance of symbolism in Renaissance art and literature. Then write a short essay comparing the code used in this chapter to other examples of secret codes and ciphers from the Renaissance and earlier periods. For extra credit, I challenge you to design your own cipher based on something you know well, like a favorite book or movie. Be sure to include a key to your cipher and bring it to class next week. You never know. You might just crack one of history's oldest secrets. Hey, class, it's time for your final pop quiz. What secret language do these images have in common? Turn to the person next to you and discuss. Ready? Okay. Pause the video and write your answer in the comment section. In the grand tapestry of history, few eras resonate with the vibrancy and ingenuity of the Renaissance. This period marked not only a rebirth in art and science, but also a revolution in how humans interacted with nature. And what better way to communicate ideas and philosophies than through a secret language? Enter the world of Renaissance gardens, where every plant, path and fountain had a story to tell those who knew how to listen. Join us as we unravel the cryptic lexicon of flora and fauna that adorned these exquisite outdoor sanctuaries. From the mundane to the mystical, no detail was too small to convey a message. And as we explore this secret language, we'll uncover how these gardens became more than just landscapes. They became living, breathing canvases for the great minds of the Renaissance. It all began with a single step into the garden. The very act of entering a Renaissance garden was often a carefully orchestrated experience. Visitors would be greeted by a series of pathways that were not just functional, but were designed to lead them through a carefully constructed narrative. Winding paths symbolized the twists and turns of knowledge, while straight avenues represented the pursuit of wisdom and enlightenment. Canals and reflecting pools became not just decorative elements, but mirrors to the heavens above, inviting contemplation of the cosmos and one's place within it. The very layout of the garden was a map, guiding the visitor's journey from the mundane world into a realm where nature and intellect intertwine. The next chapter in our story unfolds with the silent actors, the carefully chosen plants that whispered their secrets to those who understood their language. Trees played a pivotal role in this green cryptography. Their species, size, and even shape carried hidden meanings. For instance, the mighty oak, with its sprawling branches and enduring strength, often symbolized wisdom and immortality. Meanwhile, the slender cypress, with its pointed silhouette reaching towards the sky, was seen as an emblem of eternal life and resurrection. Shrubs and flowers added their own nuanced vocabulary to the garden's lexicon. Roses, with their intoxicating fragrance and vibrant hues, spoke of love and beauty. The subtle allure of lilies hinted at purity and spirituality. Herbs like rosemary and thyme, with their aromatic leaves, carried echoes of remembrance and courage. Every flower that bloomed and every leaf that unfurled was a testament to a carefully crafted design. These weren't just plants. They were participants in a silent dialogue. But the language of the Renaissance garden didn't end with the visual and olfactory. The auditory realm was given equal importance. The gentle murmur of flowing water was more than just a soothing sound. It was a commentary on the transient nature of life. The gurgling of a fountain or the cascading of a waterfall served as a reminder of the constant change that was a part of existence. Birdsong was another key element in this symphony of meaning. The melodious tunes of birds were seen as a celebration of joy and freedom, their cheerful melodies adding another layer to the garden's rich tapestry of symbolism. As we delve deeper into the heart of this green labyrinth, we encounter structures that are more than just architectural marvels. They are integral parts of the secret language. Garden architecture, with its fountains, statues, and arbours, had its own code to convey. Fountains, with their playful jets of water, symbolized the life-giving power of water, a source of vitality and renewal. Statues, whether mythological figures or allegorical representations, added a layer of storytelling to the garden. Each sculpture had a tale to impart, a myth to revive or an idea to personify. Arbours and trellises, with their climbing vines and overhead pathways, represented the ascent of the soul towards enlightenment. The interplay of light and shadow through these leafy canopies was seen as a metaphor for the journey of discovery. Every stone, every bronze casting, and every trickle of water contributed to a shared narrative. And then there were the less obvious elements, the subtle details that added depth to the garden's lexicon. Consider, for instance, the humble garden wall. It wasn't just a boundary. It was a barrier between the known and the unknown, a nod to the mysteries that lay beyond human understanding. The wall became a canvas for climbing plans, a symbol of the relentless pursuit of knowledge and the desire to reach new heights of understanding. Pathways, too, had their own stories to tell. The material they were made of, whether gravel, brick or stone, spoke of practicality and durability. The patterns they formed, whether geometric or free-flowing, added an element of surprise and wonder. These seemingly mundane aspects of the garden were transformed into carriers of meaning, enriching the overall narrative. Now let's turn our attention to the most enigmatic players in this green drama, the hidden symbols and emblems scattered throughout the garden. These were not just ornamental pieces, they were keys to a secret code that unlocked deeper meanings. Emblems, often in the form of sundials, compasses, and hourglasses, symbolized the passage of time. They served as reminders of the fleeting nature of life and the importance of making the most of each moment. Hidden symbols, such as astrological signs and alchemical motifs, appealed to the Renaissance fascination with the esoteric. They invited contemplation of the mysteries of the universe and the hidden forces that shaped existence. Not gardens with their intricate patterns and hidden pathways symbolized the complexities of knowledge and the rewards of those who sought to unravel its mysteries. Mazes, too, had their own allegorical meaning. They represented the challenges and complexities of life and the need to navigate through them with wisdom and clarity. Each symbol, each emblem, and each hidden feature was a brushstroke on the grand canvas of the garden's secret language. They transformed the simple stroll into a journey of discovery, inviting the viewer to become an active participant in the unfolding narrative. And what better place to showcase these secrets than in the very heart of Florence, the birthplace of the Renaissance, the Boboli Garden. Stretching behind the magnificent Pitti Palace, the Boboli is more than just a garden. It's a living testament to the Medici family's power and their patronage of the arts. But it's also a treasure trove of Renaissance garden design principles. As you wander through its mazes and along its waterways, you're not just admiring the beauty, you're deciphering a secret language. The choice of plants alone is a masterclass in symbolism. The cypress trees with their towering presence speak of immortality, while the roses and lilies add layers of meaning with their associations with love and spirituality. Fountains and statues dot the landscape, each with its own mythological tale to tell. Hidden symbols and emblems are scattered throughout, inviting you to pause, reflect, and decode their hidden messages. The very layout of the garden is a lesson in Renaissance garden design, with its carefully constructed pathways leading you on a journey through a world of hidden meanings. As we continue our exploration of the Medici's magnificent estate, it's important to focus on the piece de resistance. The piece de resistance of the Boboli Garden, the Grotta Grande or the Great Grotto, tucked away in a secluded corner of the garden. This natural wonder is not just a picturesque spot, it's a repository of symbolic meaning. The grotto, with its rough-hewn walls adorned with shells and minerals, symbolizes the primordial forces of nature. It's a reminder of the raw power that lies beneath the surface of civilization. The play of light and shadow through the grotto's openings creates an ethereal atmosphere, enhancing its mystical allure. This is a place where the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural seem to blur, where the sights and sounds transport you to another realm. As you stand within the Grotte Grande, you're not just experiencing a garden. You're deciphering a secret language that connects you to the Renaissance minds that created this masterpiece. You're stepping into a world where nature, art and philosophy intertwine to create a symphony of meaning. The garden becomes more than just a landscape. It becomes a mirror to the soul, reflecting the deepest longings and intellectual pursuits of the human spirit. As we bring our journey through the secret language of Renaissance gardens to a close, let's take a moment to appreciate the lasting impact of these outdoor sanctuaries. Even today, centuries after their creation, Renaissance gardens continue to whisper their cryptic messages to those who take the time to listen. In contemporary public and private gardens around the world, echoes of Renaissance design and symbolism can be found. Modern artists and landscape architects are reviving the classical motifs, reinterpreting them through a contemporary lens. Elements like water features, meandering pots, and carefully selected plant species pay homage to the rich legacy of Renaissance garden design. By incorporating these timeless elements, modern gardens become vessels of continuity, bridging the gap between past and present. They serve as reminders of the enduring power of nature to inspire, educate, and heal. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more captivating journeys through time. Your support means the world to us and allows us to keep bringing these stories to life. Thank you for joining us today, and until next time, may your own life be a garden filled with the blossoms of knowledge and the fruits of curiosity.